Welcome to the Dance Centre podcast. I am your host, Claire French, and I'm joining you from the traditional unceded territories of the Musqueam, Squamish and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, also known as Vancouver, Canada. I'll be talking to dancers, choreographers and other members of the dance world here on the West Coast to find out more about their creative work and practices and to discuss what it means to us to be dance professionals today. Thanks for joining us. Ralph Escamillan is a queer Canadian, Philippine performance artist, choreographer, teacher and community leader based on the unceded territories of the Squamish, Musqueam and Tsleil-Waututh nations, also known as Vancouver, BC. Starting at age 14, Ralph trained first in breakdancing, then explored a multitude of other street dance styles, such as hip-hop, popping, house, whacking and locking. His passion for dance expanded to include training in Vogue ballroom, ballet, modern, jazz, and he graduated from Modus Operandi's contemporary training program in 2015. Ralph has worked and toured with Vancouver companies such as Company 605, Company Rasga Dance, Kinesis Dance Summer Teatro, Out in a Space Theatre, Winway Dance, and Maskell Dance. He apprenticed with Kid Pivot in 2014 and was a guest dancer with Ballet BC in 2020. In the commercial industry, he's worked with choreographers including AJ Akimon, Luther Brown, Kenny Ortega, Tucker Barkley, and Mandy Moore, as well as artists Victoria Duffield and Zendaya Coleman, and was a guest dancer for Janet Jackson's Unbreakable tour in 2015. In the ballroom scene, since 2014, Ralph is known as Posh Vasalia Basquiat, opening his own Kiki House of Vasalia in 2018, and since 2021 is in the mainstream ballroom house of Basquiat. The founder and artistic executive director of the nonprofit organization Van Vogue Jam, Ralph shares his passion for Vogue and ballroom culture at his weekly Pay What You Can classes and Vogue balls, acting as a beacon for the queer dance culture in Western Canada. His company, Fake Not, creates inclusive performance works and focuses on a highly collaborative process that strives to understand the complexities of identity and culture through costume, sound, technology, and the body. As an artistic director, Ralph gathers his breadth of experience as a dancer from street, commercial, and contemporary dance to create a truly unique choreographic perspective, while also questioning his identity as a queer person of color. I am joined by Ralph Escamillan, very excited to talk with Ralph about his remarkable career, activity, initiative, motivation, just what he manages to do with dance. I mean, I don't think he ever stops. Anyway, so we're talking about so many things, but we're going to start by, I would love for Ralph to kind of tell our listeners what he thinks his career path is, what the milestones are maybe in his training at this point in his career, and because we'll talk about so many different styles of dance, I think, in this, and we'll have so many different things to talk about. Ralph, thank you so much for being here first, and would you please take it away in terms of your training? We know a little bit, but please just fill us in a little bit more.
Yeah, my name is Ralph Escamillan. I currently am using he, him pronouns. I'm on unceded Musqueam, Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, grew up in Vancouver since age 5. Dance, I feel like, specifically my career, I feel like when I hear that question, it makes me think about the different rooms I'm in.
Nice.
I'm learning a lot of the work that I'm interested in, or the work that I do is all about space. It's about building spaces between people, whether that's a studio, whether that's Robson Square, whether that's like a beach in the Philippines or something. Mm-hmm. I feel like a lot of the work I'm interested in has become about space building, and dance being one of the now many other vehicles for that creation, that type of creation. I think my career is largely informed by my need to continue learning, continue exploring, and I guess especially from a very early age, actually, I guess like this want to like understand myself, and learn more about who I am, whether that is like from a biological level, an ancestral level, or a regional, national, global level. And I think it's that multiplicities of self, which is like, I feel like a tagline I use a lot, because I think there are many versions of me, as I'm sure we'll be talking about today, that keeps me present. I think it ironically anchors me into myself. with the multiplicity.
So what I love about that is that I feel like there's something about your versatility in dance is also another thing that allows you to be present as a dancer, because you have so many things that you can draw on, that you're drawing upon, and that you are perhaps kind of influenced by the space in which you're in to access some of those things, and you can access so many. So there's something about that kind of being interested in the multiplicity and versatility that actually also continues to kind of keep you present in your dancing, right? You can just like, you can keep surprising yourself and other people. So yeah, I think that's really interesting. Really interesting. Would you say that this also extends into how you've learned? Like, so you say this, the different rooms that you are in, and I think that's a really nice way of explaining that there is a different atmosphere set up with different styles, and because the way in which you learn those different styles, how the social, I mean, I'm obsessed with this part, but how the social engagement is in a room with the different styles is a big part of how that space is created, and then how you feel walking into those spaces to feel like you either belong or have to find your mark or have to mark your territory even, right? So I feel like you've had that from day one, and that you have a really lovely kind of invitational kind of approach to contemporary because of you coming from street dance and all those different kinds of things. Would you agree, or do you
Yeah,
think it's
I kind of want to go back to what you're just saying about access, and uh,
Mm.
I feel like access has been a big part of my ability to keep learning and continue learning and growing. And I want to point out, like, my multiplicity is based on a privilege that I've been able to earn. I say earn because I did not grow up with a lot
Mm-hmm.
of privilege
Mm-hmm.
from a monetary way. I think I've been very privileged in other ways, through culture, through my mom, through her amazing support. But
Mm-hmm.
from a monetary value, like, it was a pretty hard upbringing. I wouldn't say harder than anyone else's, or less hard than someone, but I feel like there was struggle, and I think that type of struggle allowed me, for when I did have opportunities that felt huge, that felt monumental, to really appreciate and seek, and then continue seeking them. Like, after, there was almost like, I guess, this need to continue exploring. Okay, cool. I performed in this place, and then, so what's next after that? What is the next? And I think for some folks as well, the next is always, there's always a fear to it, connected to it. But I
Yeah.
think there's an
Yeah.
invitation with the next. There's an invitation, and a lot of it too, growing up as a single child as well. And this is just like therapy stuff, but I think not, and also not growing up with family. I feel there's a big space left in the gap of my body, physically and mentally, where I had so much open or available storage to learn. That's been a way I've been thinking about it. I'm like, oh, like, I may have lost in some ways, unfortunately, like a connection to family, which I think now, as I'm getting older, I'm able to take more lead on learning more about, and trying to build those, mend and build those relationships again. But I think why I haven't stopped myself is because there has been nothing that has stopped me yet to continue on. I feel, yeah, the different rooms I've been in. I think I talk about my first, like, experience of, like, really training in dancing, like, technically, and I think I talk about my breakdancing training I did with Jared Kaizen, who is a teacher at Harbour Dance Center. He's part of, like, a very well-known breakdancing crew called a Now or Never crew. I remember the first day after I took the class, my body was just so sore, and I just remember that feeling, that change of my body, that I was like, oh wow, I have an ability to change myself from this physical place. And I think that was so surreal to me, because I think prior to that, I was already interested in, like, art making and crafting and building sculptures, and I was very handy in school, and I think I already had an affinity for art making. But to be able to physicalize it, to feel it internally, to feel it through the body, was just a whole new world for me. And I continue wanting to learn more and kind of keep pushing my physical boundaries, not in a way where it's like, I guess, like, not unhealthily. Like, I feel I was very aware of, like, my safety and my body, and that after a certain point too, I'm like, this is the career I'm going to be in. So I need to start thinking smart, being strategic of how I use my body, and figuring out and listening in the room ways that people take care of themselves in order to continue working. To add on to that, sorry, I'm going into a tangent,
Yeah,
but I feel
yeah.
like
It's
I
great.
think I think the understanding of how a room works is also a tool that comes from like an immigrant experience, a way of having to fit in or systemically assimilate. And so I feel like seeing how my mom grew up, like my mom worked, and hearing her stories from work when I was younger, like some stuff that happened in the office, or maybe I'm learning, maybe I maybe didn't hear, but I felt her energy of how
Yes.
she had to maneuver those environments of predominantly like white professionals,
Yeah.
like big corporate. I think I was able to understand how to use the room to my advantage and how to position myself in a place where I am necessary. And in the other way around, a reminder that you are necessary, like you are needed, you are valued,
Mm-hmm.
which I think has really helped me carry on. I think it's interesting because I think in some dance rooms, I mean, I would say like ballet, modern, contemporary dance, like Eurocentrically centered art making, I think there is a hierarchical system. And I feel like coming from a street dance background first really gave me that anchoring of like you're individual, that you are
Mm-hmm.
one, you are your own, but you are also complicit in the community. Like there is a reciprocal relationship that
Mm-hmm.
one teaches the other one. Like there's a sharing. And I think because it didn't have as such a finite.
Yeah, almost like titles, right? Or like a
Yeah,
division of roles or something. Yeah.
yeah, and also that
Yeah.
it didn't. I think a lot of people, since a lot of street dance even now, it's not financially driven. Like people only maybe now that breakdancing is going into the Olympics, like there are careers for street dance, and like
Mm-hmm.
a lot of careers. I wouldn't say there aren't careers, but I think a lot of careers are informed by either battling or teaching in street
Yeah.
dance.
Right.
So, but the rest of that, a lot of people just do it for the cultural context, to gather, to
Mm-hmm.
socialize, to like listen to good music, to hang out, to like appreciate each other's style. I don't know. There's a lot of ways I feel like that street dance mentality has really carried on to how I work now, and like I think I've been paralleling a lot. That kind of cultural context is similar to like outside other cultures outside of North America, where this idea of gathering, I would say, even reminiscent to like indigenous cultures of like how they gather.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely. Which is
so
absolutely, Vancouver and its, and its origins, of
mhm, mhm,
this land, that we
mhm,
both
mhm,
are on right now. Yeah, and I feel like through this whole thing, from when you started talking about your beginnings and your discoveries, there is a real sense of respecting identity, I think, and a real like time to learn about something that you're giving to a room. And I think that can change a space. I think when you come in with the attitude of respecting identity, like everybody's identity, and that you're giving time to learn about something when you're with people, I think that
mhm,
can change the room.
mhm, mhm, mhm,
Yeah, there's
mhm,
something really interesting there, I think, where there is a meeting of minds. And I mean minds that are embodied minds. I mean like bodies when I say
mhm,
minds,
mhm, mhm,
which I know
mhm,
you completely understand, that
mhm,
is working from that place, right? Working with that and working to care for that. So I will say, I think there is something in all of the styles that you do where there is that sense of respect of the form that you are doing, which is why you're so good, I think, regardless of what you're up to. But I wonder if we could just kind of flip around a little bit and talk about some of the choices you've made and which rooms you've chosen to be in. And partly this is to do with the fact that I know you're working in flamenco a little bit right now, and maybe a lot, but you've also got your contemporary career. You have worked with Ballet BC and with Kid Pivot and those kinds of Winway and a whole bunch of different dance companies that cross over through the contemporary into other forms that aren't street dance necessarily, and you're seeking out these opportunities, and I feel like that's a continuation. Having said that, I'm also interested in how you feel with your question around hierarchy when you put yourself in a position of mentee, intern, apprentice, all of these things. There's a I think the context you've provided us with a lot of context for, you want to learn, but what's that been like for you to be there as opposed to being in a group process or something, or working, in an ensemble environment, but actually going out for this mentorship thing, this
mhm.
targeted, particular kind of approach? Can you talk a little bit about that?
I guess for the first thing, when it comes to the rooms I've chosen, or maybe not, maybe just been guided to being in, I didn't know that dance would be a career I could pursue for financial stability. Like when I was when I didn't think it was possible. I didn't know what there's no really there's not a true map of like a successful dancing career, I think. And I think I guess there's of course there's like maybe two streams I could think of, which is like the ballet stream is like you train when like you're 7 or 14, and then you do conservatory or whatever, and then you book work from that. Or the other one is like going through a university institutional structure. I didn't follow those formats, but I've yet to still been able to have the opportunity to work in the end goals of one of those training regimens. So
Yeah.
I think I think it is because of the fluidity of my training, and also akin to like what is and what was wanted from dancers. I would say is now still is this eagerness that I think that made me quite, for lack of a better term, sellable. And I say this with an awareness that like I know the body is conversation, like right now, dialogues of body and selling oneself, and I think I've come to terms with that. Like this is my job. That the dancing body, like on a stage, is a job. We have to work, and we think there is a keen awareness for me that like we are selling ourselves in a way in order to work. The body is we're paying for bodies to watch, and I'm being paid for that work. So there is a reciprocal transactional relationship there.
Yeah. Yeah.
That being said, but we could also watch bodies and move outside. Like we can watch, and in other cultures, dance is for everyone. I think that's another conversation to have maybe later, but about the lack of dance in the everyday.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the need for it to be seen on the stage. I mean, North American context is very different, so maybe it's another day. But where I'm going with this, I guess, is I feel the rooms that I've been chosen, I decided, and I would say decided to stay in, and I pursued, were always in the interest of learning more. It was always an interest of growing myself.
And I don't think there's anything wrong in also increasing your potential to be sold.
Yes.
Do you know
yes.
what I mean? Like your commercial viability,
Yes.
right? Your economic viability. This is something that you have learned that you can do, and you've built skills to be able to have many things that you offer to people in that regard. But it's not how you train. You don't. Yeah, you're not training for the dollar. You're training for something else, and it turns into possible. It's like an enterprise, really. It's like like.
And then I guess I don't know if that answered that question fully, the first one, but the second question about mentorship and leadership, it's so interesting. I don't know. I feel like I can speak first as wanting to seek mentorship, wanting to seek support. I feel that again that falls in line with my interest of a continued learning, and I also have a fear, I guess, also of like an imposter syndrome of knowing everything and being like, I know everything. And because I've seen in rooms that I've worked in where that has been it's been the deficit of a project is the director thinking that they know everything. So I think the invitation and the want to have a mentor, an outside eye, a dramaturge in my work comes from, I guess, a reminder to myself that I still can learn more even within the work, and vice versa. The mentors that I get to work with, that I've been able, I have the luck and the fortune to be in spaces with me, also learn from me. There's been a really strong reciprocal relationship that as long as they're supporting me, they're also learning a lot from how I'm working. So then you have this conversation of intergenerational like knowledge exchange that I think is so vital, and is how many cultures exchange knowledge to each other.
Absolutely.
That is foreign in some contexts, and here in this part of the world is very surreal to me.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that also comes from me being able to relinquish the fact that I don't know. And I think maybe that's something that has also been a drive in my career, is that being okay to be in the unknown, and being okay in not having all the solutions, all the problems solved, but asking all the questions. And I think instead of asking it into the ether of your social media of in the whatever verse we're going to be in, to be able to speak with it with someone that has a lived experience. And I know that comes in a very weighted term now, but it comes from an experience that has been of life. I think it is just a very different answer you get, I think. And I think,
yeah, it elicits the type of conversation that gets into, like, that gets deeper, quicker, I think. Yeah. And also it's like you're faced with different perspectives immediately. Like how we interpret each other's words is already a step towards opening up our perspective on what the reality is of our situation. If you can do that authentically, then it's wonderful. But yeah, I know what you mean. There's a lot of the time when some people are not open to another person's perspective for whatever reason, just how are thrown by somebody else's perspective, which
yeah.
yeah. So I think that's beautiful. And I think there's something about knowing that you don't know, but still trying, or still asking questions, and still having a goal, I think is really important. And I think our goals are, kind of often poo-pooed these days as something that, is too ambitious in the world and too self-centered. But I think it's really important to, they can change, but I think it's really important that you are aiming for something, because that can help you. It helps you learn. It just helps you learn.
And I would say on the other side, as a mentor for others,
Yeah.
I'm in a place right now where I'm being faced with having to mentor people, and I guess I'm learning how to balance my want for them, and also
Yes.
being able to listen
Yeah.
to what is present.
Absolutely.
And it's very
Absolutely.
interesting. And
Yeah.
I think the way I'm approaching my mentorships are about offerings. And I think for a lot of people, it's hard to just have offerings instead of the answers. And I think, that being said, I think that's how I've been mentored. So I think I'm mentoring the way I've been mentored, is that here are offers to how an answer could be found. And it's interesting, I think, the power dynamic of a mentor, because I think depending on the context, some folks just want the answer.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to work through the offering.
No.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And giving them more choice is sometimes like just devastating for them. But at the same time, it just leads to it leads to potentially a different set of questions that get them closer to being able to take it on themselves. So I think that's interesting. Yeah, that's really good. So let's talk a little bit about how you balance all of the paths, because just to go over a little bit, I'd like to, for me, this gets to a little bit of the commercial world as well, but not necessarily financially, but just in terms of the fact that you do the Van Vogue Jam, you have your own house, I believe, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about that. Then you're also a model, and you're also, so all of those commercial things and anything that you think fits in under the commercial category in your life, please share with us now. So
Yeah, I would say so. On the commercial end, I've been a union member of the UBCP and ACTRA union, I believe, since like 2017 or 18, I think. So it's almost coming to about 5 years of being a union member. And I think that came out of just, I'm like, I have enough credits and I guess I should just do it. And there was a great deal at the time to be a union member. And I'm like, I don't work a lot anyways in film. And when I do, they're usually union jobs. So I might as well just unionize. And it wasn't until more recently where I was able to actually reap the benefits of a union, because with union, you also get health insurance. There's like health insurance packages based on how much money you make on a job throughout the season or whatever. So it was amazing recently to have like dental, like almost like a lot of it covered, and like, whoa, or like things like that. So it was kind of surreal, because in concert dance, performance and theater dance world, that's very seldom the case. Like you have the opportunity to have a health insurance. So that
Yeah.
was a positive for sure. But I think being in the film and TV industry, I mean, that was a goal for me when I was younger. It's like, I want to do film and TV. Like that's something I'm interested in exploring. I grew up with my mom, like watching like live tours on TV and watching people on like shows like dance and stuff. And I think that was always like a dream I've had. I continue to have that dream still. So I thought it was like just the right progression. But I think I didn't get my success in it until I think a few years like after I was training. And I think what was interesting was when I was auditioning before I started getting actual work, I was trying to be something they wanted. And they meaning like proverbial, like industry,
Casting. Yeah.
Hollywood,
Yeah,
whatever,
exactly.
TV, Hollywood, media world.
Cumulative, yeah.
Yeah. And what's interesting is like, I feel like once I started actually tapping into myself, I started getting more work, which is so surreal. And I think it also comes from this awareness of like what you're selling, who you are, your quote unquote package. And my package came through just me genuinely being interested about being genuinely interested in myself and like wanting to learn more about what I did. So this is also a time of later on, like wanting queer artists, like artists of color, like dancers of color, like all this stuff. So it kind of came in a good time. And I think financially those were one of the reasons why I stayed in film and TV. And maybe only one or two of the jobs I've ever done, I've ever felt like the most gratified by the room, by how the relationship between the choreographer and director was. And it's very rare. So a lot of it is a great way of financially supporting yourself. But I think there's also, because jobs are so scarce, it creates a type of person that I'm not really excited about being in my life. Like I don't think I want to feel like the necessity or that I'm waiting for the next job. And
Yeah.
I wanted more control over my career and my life. And I feel like, ironically, I don't think the funding body is any better, but I think there are ways to feel a sense of more agency in that world. Because I would say both worlds still require money in order to create and make things happen. When money is involved, regardless if it's funded by the government or funded by a Hollywood director, it's still money. So I feel though with the funding system, it feels like there are ways of accommodating people's lives and care that I think can't happen in the same way in the film world where it's like so fast paced. I do love both rooms, and I feel like now jetting into a world now where I'm getting into choreographing musicals and in the choreography world now, I wonder if there's going to be this transition back into film with that. But I also I'm patient, but there's a huge line for a successful commercial career. And I just rather focus my energy on things that are happening and that are present, that are feeding me as well. So sorry, that was a tangent of stuff. But
No, it's great. So let's go with the tangent for a second.
Okay, go.
Choreographing a musical. Can you talk a little bit about the musical that you are currently choreographing, and
Yeah.
if we can see it, when we can see it?
Well,
Because we'll get to all of your contemporary stuff in a minute, so we're
yeah,
going to get there.
yeah.
But let's do this now.
Yeah. Well, I just worked on my first equity musical with Corey Payette, who is a two-spirited Indigenous director, a songwriter, everything. He kind of does everything. He's pretty wild. But we premiered a new show called Star Walker at the York Theater and Commercial Drive. Not New York. I want to preface York, York, because people are like, New York. I'm like, no, I did that in 21.
Not yet. Yeah.
I've done
and
New York before.
And you'll do it again.
Yeah, hopefully we'll do it again. We'll see.
New York's not going anywhere. Yeah.
No, yeah. I mean, it is an island of trash, but
yeah.
So we premiered the musical in February of 2023 of this year. And we are now in a phase of filming a film version, an indie film version of it. So
great.
That process has been really interesting because I was a choreographer first, but then I ended up being hired as an ensemble performer. So I was singing for the first time on stage, which I haven't done in so long. I have a history of singing when I was like a kid. Of course, being Filipino, we sing, we do everything. And then also I was understudy So I was playing 3 roles within that production, which is a lot to carry. And luckily, I had some support with my assistant, Ross Vertman. But this film version has been interesting, like because that's a world that I'm more aware of. I understand how your call sheet works, and I understand like the rules and stuff. So it was cool to come from the theater, the musical theater, and
Yeah.
then going into the camera. And I feel like I'm so happy. I feel comfortable. I'm able to transition so fluidly because I know for a lot of people like it is a different medium. But I think for me, all the rooms feel like there's different things you have to like put up in the walls in the rooms that you're in, but the room is a room. Like the room is a room is a room, and
Yeah.
being able to understand how my body, how I fit in the room has been a really interesting journey. And I think I'm able to carry the same tools and just shift how I use the tool in a new way, which makes it feel like I'm not having to take out a whole new toolbox. Yeah, the tool is a modular tool. That's been really exciting.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So when you say you're comfortable, are you comfortable behind the camera? Like, are you comfortable with shooting and knowing how to frame and what to frame? Do you storyboard?
Yeah, actually, it's quite interesting. I feel because of the different ways of working I've experienced, I carry on some of the storyboarding in
Yeah,
in my fake not pieces. So like
yeah.
I already use it. I love Excel, which I don't know how that happened. I want to say that came from my mom and her brain, but I love
Well, and just and
organizing
detail and
in
detail, right?
detail.
It's
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And also I think it comes from also understanding how working, especially these bigger projects. I feel like I work with a lot of people in my work, so having like
Mm,
a document or a something that everyone can anchor to like have if they have like, oh, what's happening in this work, I think has been really helpful for the processes that I'm interested in having. And I mean, working and seeing how Crystal works for
yeah.
Pivot, how seeing how like Wenway works, but also then seeing how a big Hollywood director works, and then how I was listening
Mhm.
to someone in like the Philippines work. Like these different ways of working has really helped support and find, not that I have like a formula of making my work at all by any means, but I think it just gives me ways of approaching how to create based on what is needed at the moment or what.
Yeah, and I feel like it's another way of archiving a project, right? Because
Mhm.
as all of the ways in which you are organizing and coordinating the project as you go is also a form of archive of that process. And, the different people that you work with need access to different codes and different, ways to understand their role in the work going forward, and to even understand the work in the way that they need to be able to collaborate with you. So, we don't all need to have the same information, I think, in order to, yeah, I think that's great. So I'd love to just flip to the art making side. And there's so many other things we could talk about, as you've already mentioned. And I think a conversation around art making versus community or social gathering dancing and everyday dancing and all of those things is a whole other thing, because I think sometimes the split is also unfortunate, like the, kind of needing to over define one versus the other is a little bit of an unfortunate thing we have in our society. But however, Fake Not is your contemporary creation interdisciplinary company, and as you've alluded to already, you work with a lot of people, and you don't just mean you work with 100 dancers, but it's not just that. It's not just working with models to stage a show. It's literally, you're talking about sound, mixed media artists, like the costume people, the all of the and your movement collaborators. There are so many things. And that seems to be what Fake Not is about. You've built it for that reason. So I'm just going to mention a little bit that you've had I think two big pieces with Fake Not. You've had Whip and now you have PINA. But yeah, would you like to talk a little bit about Fake Not in general?
Mhm.
And then maybe we'll move a little bit to, you can talk about Whip if you like, but move a little bit to PINA, because I think that brings us all the way back around to the things you talked about with your identity and ancestry and all of those wonderful things. In
Mhm.
the meantime, the one other thing that we won't get the time to talk about today, but will come up in this Fake Not thing, and we'll save it for another time, is your interest in other things like fashion and photography and all of those things. So please feel free to kind of segue tangent off into that world as well and come back if you so desire.
Mm-hmm.
But it's really just to tell us about Fake Knot and in your way,
Mm-hmm.
present
Mm-hmm.
today. Tell us your Fake Knot story.
Yeah. I feel Fake Knot is kind of an umbrella and an alias for all my interest in one, really this interest of fashion, clothing, textile, and the body. And I think maybe it will be a precursor to a fashion life in another time. But I think right now,
I can see that.
yeah, because my tools and my learning has come from understanding the moving body. I think garments and clothing inherently become part of that moving. I feel that when I'm thinking of making and creating, the first things I think about is like what it looks like, the visual. So I think in one way I become a visual artist in that point, and then after I think about the sound. What's the sound? So I'm thinking about wanting to work and who am I collaborating with, because I think historically too, working with other artists when you're using copywritten music, it's actually a functional reason of having your own scores so that you don't have to worry about copywriting.
Absolutely, it's true.
And then it also offers an opportunity for another way of collaborating, which I think is really exciting. And I think it also allows me to carve the space for the audience even more. So the choreography is through the music as well. And then we get into the lighting world. And then lighting is just another type of architecture in this space. And new media would also involve those two kind of mediums. And so I feel like, and I've said this in many an interview, that like my work I'm interested in making is about building an architecture. It's building scaffolding or building an environment for then the dance to be able to be built off of. So I guess it's in a way, it's a way of me maybe showing how the systems that we live in inform our bodies in a way, I think. And each piece is a different environment, is a different system, is a different society, maybe.
Room.
Yeah, a different room, exactly. Yeah. I would say Hinky Punk was one of my first bigger pieces that I did.
Sorry, I forgot to mention that one.
It's okay. It's okay.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's got your stamp absolutely all over it. Exactly what you've just said. That's the marker.
That's Hinky Punk.
That's the birth of Fake Knot, isn't it?
Yeah. So, like for me, that work was really anchored in iconography. I was really interested in exploring my relationship to ballroom culture, to voguing, and it kind of spiraled from there. And what I use in order to inform me spatially is a 4x4 cube, and there was no way of changing that. So I kept the 4x4 cube from the conception of the work at the art gallery in Fuse in like 2017 maybe, and then until the premiere, and then until the tour. So I kind of it was quite a challenge to continue touring a work by 4x4 cube, but it was interesting because it really forced me to, through constraints, challenge how I can create a work and entice an audience for an hour. We had a projection, of course, with chimeric panels that would come up and down. So I was already experimenting with design. How do we incorporate a projection space that isn't in proscenium, and having it freeform? And this idea of also touring without the need for a huge rig or a big stage, and excessive, and finding new ways to present the work in other spaces that aren't a theater. And that was, I felt really radical. And I think it still feels radical. And I remember a lot of presenters didn't like it because they couldn't get out of the mindset of their theaters not being full or filled in a way that they're accustomed to.
Yeah.
So it was antagonizing for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then,
but it's a bringing together of two worlds, though, in my mind.
Yeah.
As well. And more than two worlds, but it brings it's exciting now. If you were to do that again, you probably are not interested in doing it now, but I wonder if more presenters would be on board. Anyway, let's move on to the next one.
And then the second work, my most recent work, I premiered in 2021 at the May, was Whip. So that was a show where, again, my constraints became about not seeing. So we created, I helped design this like leather hood piece with Lincoln Heller, a 5F leather, where these like long bison tubes. He just had leather, and we wanted to do a fashion show project, and it didn't end up panning out, but we designed this costume ready. So I'm like, let's make a piece out of it. And it was really cool. And I like this idea of not being able to see. Like, so if I can't see, then how do I move in space? And I'm like, well, sound, because that's how you can move in space. Like and I was inspired by another show that I watched in Australia. I forgot the artist, but I was there for Sydney Fest, and the way they use sound was so exciting. And I'm like, it'd be so cool we had that technology, but in the show. So, but again, with that one, instead of on a 4x4 cube, I expanded to a 20 by 20 square foot square. So these choices that I'm making for measuring and like deciding creative like design choices really early on has also come from like a need for like tech writers to come in like 2 years before the show is even premiered from like for the presenter. You know, it's like, do you know like how much, like, I don't know, but if I make this space of a 20 by 20 cube, I know this is going to fit in the theater, and it might fit in any other theater. Like, you know, if I create these landmarks, literal landmarks in the space, then I know what I'm working with instead of having to like shift in different theaters all the time. So there's a function for it. Like these are all functional and necessary, and also inform the work inherently through that.
Yeah, and a sellable function, or at least part of that same idea. Yeah.
And with that too, I couldn't see. So then, since I couldn't see, how are you gonna know where lights are, where our spot, where we have to stand in lighting? So then I'm like, okay, well, I know because of my wanting to keep learning, I knew that there was technology that could see bodies through either infrared or through like depth. Yeah. So we worked with Shamiric again to create like a program that would actually follow the bodies in space. But it wasn't always successful, but I think the few times that we're there, it was exciting that it was there. And then we did set moments of light, of course.
Yeah.
And then this new work is all solely on PIÑA, which is the namesake of the work. And similar to the past works with Hinky Punk and Whip, PIÑA, like I literally keep pulling that thread of what it was and why I like it, why I'm interested in it. And a lot of it came from the images of Philippine people that I would see in like the textbooks, and they would wear barongs, or terno sleeves, which are like Spanish Philippine, the traditional garments. The Philippines is a place of many different cultures. So there's not just one dress, but this is the dress that was put out in the world outside of the Philippines.
Yeah, to identify the Philippines, I suppose. Filipino.
Yeah.
Okay.
And those dresses, those shirts were usually made out of PIÑA, so the pineapple fiber. And I was like, why pineapple fiber? And then so I just kept asking the questions, and then I kept looking for the answers, and the answers kept revealing more questions. So pineapples weren't native to the Philippines; they came from the Spanish galleon trade. So inherently has a Spanish colonial history through its transportation of the actual plant. So it inherently, at least for me, connects to my cultural historical background, because my family comes from predominantly from the part of the Philippines that has like the most like concentration of Spanish people. So I'm like, okay, this pineapple is me. I'm the pineapple. Pineapple is me. PIÑA is me.
The piña is you.
The PIñA is me.
Yeah, you're pulling the thread of the piña of the pineapple. I love that you said pulling the thread because of the fibers element of it. But then also you pineapple as object from in with Spanish, colonial history. Now doing flamenco, all it's so kind of beautifully literal.
Yeah, it's so literal.
And wonder, and then just like so expansive, so opening. Just like so
and
amazing.
It's interesting. I've been talking to my friends about the literal, being literal, and I think the function of literalness is also has been kind of hidden from, I would say, from like the art that I grew up in learning. I think there was always this need of having to abstract art, abstract what we do, and abstraction was like the value, was the way of, was the sellability. It was made it cool. And I feel like for me, I'm learning, at least for me, I think being on the nose, being literal is really cool in a way of that I can get my mom in the audience because of it now. I can get my aunt. I can get some random person on the street that doesn't know anything to be able, because they can access it, because I can play. I'm playing a police song in Whip. They already can instinctually have a connection to the work, which I think if we're having a conversation about not having enough audiences in the room anymore, in the theaters anymore, how do we get new audiences? I don't think we don't have to build new audiences. We also have to just understand that, like, who the audiences are and what the audiences want, and not necessarily of like having to pander to them, because I think there's an issue. There's like a thing of like, oh, like, well, they have to just they have to learn how to watch our shows. It's like, but we haven't given them access to. So how do you give them access to understanding the work if your work is made in a silo?
Well, and also I think if they don't feel invited,
Exactly.
if there isn't something they feel invited to engage with in some ways, they don't feel like it matters whether or not they come.
Yeah. So I think with PIÑA, what I'm taking with that sentiment is like, how do I give access to my work, to this new work, also a fiber within even the Philippine, like within Philippine people don't know where it's from. Like people don't even know pineapples came from the Spanish. They don't even know where pineapples like are like made. Like I don't know. It's like there's a whole like a block of information or knowledge that has not been transferred. So,
Yeah.
and the way I've been finding way to like support this like sharing of the knowledge is like I built a fake not learning series, which became a series where for PINA specifically, but I think it'll be something we'll be carrying on in the company as a way of having these Vimeo meeting style like casual conversations that would be paralleling the work that Fake Not is creating, so that
Yeah.
people have access to the knowledge that I applied for grants to learn about as well for the public. So working with textile conservationists, the Philippine Textile Union, weavers, like all these things, and even Philippine folk dance and how it relates to the barongs or like the Cherno sleeve dress and how it shifted in the different time periods. Like, so we have a whole Vimeo that we've built like of like playlists for just for PINA alone for people to have information if again, this idea of offering, if
Yeah.
they want to know more before they go into the theater or after, if they're more curious.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing about that too is then, because I'm interested in also like, because of the work that I'm making is so tangible, it's objects. Is there a way we can showcase the fiber in a public setting? So working with the dance center, we'll be able to also have a small exhibit of PINA in the lobby later, leading up to the premiere of the show, which is very exciting. So people have the ability to actually see the fiber outside of the stage as well. So it's
Yeah,
another way,
great.
another access point.
Yeah, that's great because that'll be two different locations, though, won't it? Then in that case, so
Yeah.
the installation thing will be at the dance center, but the show will be at the SFU Goldcorp. At
Yeah,
the
and I think
SFU
that
main.
really also really shows that collaboration part to me is that yes, SFU has like the premiere of the show, but we also have the exhibit, which is also another adjacent part of the work as well. And again, this
Mm-hmm.
idea that the projects and the pieces I'm making with Fake Not, I think the performance is just a vehicle for these access or these ways of allowing others to have knowledge shared to them, I think,
Yeah.
which I think is really exciting because it's kind of inspired me again because of like wanting to make work. Because I think it's hard because I would say for me, and not to go into this, having to go into this conversation, but I feel like, and I also know historically that artists of color come in and out of trend in North America, and this is the truth, and this is how I feel and like I think things are changing for sure, but
Mm-hmm.
do I feel they've regressed back since things of the pandemic have been like slowly slowing? Yes, but I feel like I came in a really opportune time, I think, to take advantage of the opportunities that a lot of artists of color were being offered. I think with the opportunity that I have now and with this little door I'm able to have open is like, how do we continue that dialogue of keeping this door open, And I think part of it comes from education. And that's why I think it's so vital to continue offering knowledge as free as possible, because I've definitely understood the privilege I've had in accessing knowledge that maybe wasn't meant for me, that wasn't catered or ever was never meant to even see my eyes. So, and how that's changed my world, and also how it's changed how I can shift the world I'm around as well.
Yeah, thank you. I feel like that's a real kind of legacy. It's kind of the start of a legacy. And also, we won't talk about this much, and we'll bring this to a close very soon. And thank you so much for your time and all of the things you've shared. And there's so much more we could talk about, of course. But I just want to talk about the casting because you have an entire Filipino cast, yet it's in Vancouver. And is everybody based in Vancouver and Filipino, or are you bringing people? And then also, from what you've already described, it seems like even within that, you would have different understandings of your own culture and you would have different relationships to your own culture, of course. That makes so much sense. But then I think just from what you just said about having information that was not necessarily for your eyes, that you were given or spoon-fed or forced. It was imposed upon you in some way, perhaps. I feel like there's a really interesting space now where if you're open to it, you can learn so much about other cultures and really get information that's so well researched and is actually multifaceted because people understand it differently from those cultures. And I think that's a really healthy space to be. I think it's a very positive way of starting a legacy, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
you are keeping it open. It's not
Mm-hmm.
tokenist in that way,
Mm-hmm.
and you're making sure it isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, I think with the casting of the work, it was important for me because I'm working with something that is so Filipino, like piña, and I have yet to create a work that is. I think maybe I skirted away from it out of like fear of like what it could what it would reveal is like learning about my ancestry. I've learned
yeah,
a lot about pineapples and a lot about its history, and there's a lot of crazy stuff. But with that, I'm also like this conversation of culture, of diasporic experiences. It's not monolithic. My
no,
Philippine Canadian experience is not going to be the same as someone else's. So I
mm-hmm,
think it was important, or even a person from the Philippines. So
mm-hmm,
it's important for me to have a room that reflected a diversity of those experiences. So
mm-hmm.
there was no way that I could not have an all Philippine cast, lighting, sound, costume, all my mentors, all the dramaturgy. There was no not having that. It didn't
Yeah,
make sense that the work couldn't be the work if that was not the reality of the room. And I think it's been really exciting. Like so I'm performing in the work as a choreographer and dancer, and Tingambo is also the other dancer from Vancouver. Kim Wardle is composing. This is one of maybe their first actual dance performances they've ever composed music for, a long
oh, great.
duration 6-minute piece. But with them not having experience in the granting process, I incorporated mentorship to help support them. So, and some of the music stylings are playing with kundiman, which is like love music. So they had a kundiman consultant helping support them.
Ah,
And then Gabe Raminos is his first bigger lighting project. So he's working with Jonathan Kim as mentorship. So I knew there aren't lighting designers who are who are Filipino that live in
yeah,
Vancouver that have experience. So
right.
and same as composers that live in the city. So I had to integrate that into the research process and
Mm-hmm.
as a vital, like as a
Yeah,
necessity for the project.
Yeah.
And again, then we're building. Now we have a new lighting designer in the city. Hopefully, now we have a new composer that can maybe make music for other people. So it creates a new career path for them if they want it.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then dancer from Toronto, Dana Rosales, who's also part of the ballroom community in Toronto and in Canada, really close friend of mine. Fourth dancer is Boo Boy. He's a dancer in the Philippines. He's danced for a lot of contemporary companies there, and I met him through passing years ago. And then my costumer, Jill Robin Laksamana. My dramaturgist is Denisa Reyes, who is an ex-Ballet Philippines director and also responsible for a lot of the catalyst for new emerging artists in the Philippines with Choreolab and Neo Filipino, which is she's recently left. She's my dramaturgist. So there's all these intergenerational, international, intergenre, interdisciplinary experiences that are all in the work. And I think it's just another way of like externalizing the experiences I'm interested in learning more about.
Yeah.
And having those conversations happen. And also I think the one big thing is like, if we all come from the same, more or less cultural history, there are things that don't have to be said in the room. Not that we don't have to say it, but that like little jokes, little things we eat for lunch. I think that creates a different environment in the room that is, especially if the work is about the Philippine like diasporic experience. I think it's necessary, and that is also been a really cool part of the process as well.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's
Mm.
so wonderful. I think there's so much in that, in the process of like you've just brought it right back to the body as well, right? And to the necessary body, to eating, to what you eat, to like those kinds of things, to like breathing together, to sitting together in a room, and how far away you are from each other when you choose to sit together. Those kinds of things I think are, and of course there's also the individual inside all of that, and in that, bringing it back to identity, we have to remember that we're all individuals in this, with our own stories and own like experiences wherever we're from. And so there's a really healthy way of kind of just allowing that to be. Yeah, there are so many other things, but we're not going to do it. We're not going to even open that window. We just have to talk again, Ralph. That's all.
Another day.
Yeah, another day with Ralph. There we go. Okay, excellent. Well, thanks so much for your time. We really look forward to seeing the show in May. We'll have more information on it, and I'm sure you will be talking about this with other people in the meantime. But again, thanks so much, Ralph. Okay.
Thank you so much, Claire.
Okay, see ya.
See ya.
Thank you so much for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts, as this will help other listeners find us and help us to grow our dance audience. We'll be back next month. In the meantime, you can follow us on Facebook at The Dance Centre, Twitter at Dance Centre, and Instagram at The Dance Centre BC. And if you'd like to support our work, please consider making a donation. Just go to our website at thedancecentre.ca, where you'll find extensive information about our upcoming programs and events. The music for the Dance Centre podcast was composed by James B. Maxwell. Always a pleasure to connect with you through dance. Until next time.